I bring people together to solve complex problems. That looks like a variety of different things. Sometimes I work individually one-on-one with leaders, helping to coach them to be more effective in high complexity contexts and what that means. Sometimes I work with teams. That could be software teams. It could be leadership teams around how do they organize together to be more effective in what they're needing to accomplish. And sometimes it's working with entire organizational systems. That could be something as small as like a program, and it could be something altogether larger than that as well. So it's all through those. It's a complex adaptive response. So complexity informs everything I do, and working with people informs everything I do. Well, I started as a Scrum Master. I actually started as a developer on a Scrum team, and that was back in 2007 or so. Um, and my work before being a software developer, as a professional outdoor guide, and so I knew quite a bit about leadership and leading people in uncertain environments and environments where they weren't comfortable, and in helping people feel safe in that discomfort. As a good Scrum Master does, I worked to resolve impediments that my team had. And as we solved the easier ones that we had control over, the impediments that then became visible more and more reached outside of the team to external dependencies or leadership or whatever, but the team couldn't solve them, and I needed to reach out to build some relationships and bridges, and that path of working wider and wider in an organization ended up becoming an agile coaching role. And over time, it started getting the attention of senior executives because they started seeing things were much different at the company, and directly invited me to come work with them as well. And so then I started down this path of enterprise agile coaching, which I discovered is actually really, really different than working with teams and a couple of teams to help improve deliveries, for example. So. Yeah, so it was very ad hoc and quite by accident, honestly. There was no like intentional career path. I was just making one thing better at a time, the best I could. Professional coaching as a discipline, I believe, is about unlocking potential and achieving high performance. And when I teach coaching fundamentals, and I seek to help people understand. Like in the organizational context, coaching is often a remediation, and it's often part of like a performance improvement plan. Like when people are in trouble at a company with their employment, they get assigned a coach or they get sent to coaching. And so there's this kind of negative connotation that coaching is about fixing people. And I've seen that, right? Like when I work in large transformations and I talk to a manager and they're like, that team really needs to be coached. Which what they're really saying is they're not performing it to expectations, or they're not doing what we need them to do. Go fix them. And I think that's tragic, because one of the questions I ask when we start talking about what coaching really is, I say things like, you show me the Olympic athlete that shows up without at least one coach. You show me the professional sports team that doesn't have probably a whole suite of coaches that are very specialized in different disciplines of that team's performance. And you tell me, how likely is it that they can perform at those levels of elite competition without that? And it starts showing people that coaching is an accelerator. Coaching is a way to unlock performance. Coaching is a way to find out what already works and amplify it and intentionally design it into our systems and our organizations. It's just a way to make things better in that way. From an agile coaching perspective, the critical importance of a competent, highly skilled agile coach is that we bring an enormous amount of content and expertise with us, and we can make informed suggestions. I certainly don't like to just say, here's what you ought to do. I like to say, here's what you ought to consider. How does that sound? I've seen a lot of this stuff. this is maybe your first time running an agile transformation as an organization, have you considered these things? And usually they haven't, which is why they're calling me. The ones that don't need our help, they're great. That's awesome for them. But the ones that need our help, they need that expertise. And so not only do we help them unlock and accelerate their improvement and their performance, we just bring a tremendous wealth of knowledge. Personally, I'm walking around with over a decade of knowledge. I have a master's degree, an advanced degree in organizational development. I mean, there's a lot in there that I can bring and provide to clients that need that. You need to be really good at not only solving problems, but you need to be really good at how you solve problems. Right. So I'll ask when I get invited in, I will ask, are you asking me to help you solve a problem, or are you asking me to help you get better at problem solving? Like, one thing's a very specific thing and one thing's a very wide capability. And so I think that the challenge of agility is organizations used to be able to just be really good at whatever they did. Right. So, typically we talk about like the business part of an organization, which is maybe customer facing and product focused and sort of determines the strategic direction. And then at least in a technology context, sort of the IT group, the implementation people, right? And those two kind of entities tend to have a hard time communicating and working together and collaborating and being really effective, because they're missing this piece of competence called product leadership, product management, whatever you want to call it, which helps translate and align between those two things. And so, for example, if you're a financial services company, you're really good at financial services. And if you're an IT department within financial services, you're really good at implementing those things. How good are you at creating products, value creating products that will build your business and build value in the world and enable you to fulfill your purpose? That's usually a bigger question that organizations used to be able to figure out, but today, the competition is so fierce, rates of change are so high, customer expectations evolve so quickly. What are you going to do about that? Like, how quickly can you respond? How many options can you keep open? And thus, how much choice do you have? And if you are serious as an organization about long-lasting enterprise-wide agility, you got to keep those choices open. And how you do that is, well, you need to revisit everything. Governance. So like when I enter into a system, for example, I ask about how do you manage flow of value? How do you make your product and service decisions? How do you define and assess quality of your offerings? How do you set up your governance and your organizational structures? How do you approach teams and people, the human beings in your organization? Do you talk about them using words like resources, talent, assets, which are very mechanistic, or do you talk about them as what they are? They're human beings, they're people. And people are relational, not just transactional things to move around. I ask, how are you leading? And then I ask, the thing that binds all of those things together is, how well do you understand complexity? I don't know that every organization needs to answer every one of those things, but I have a sense that they are probably important. So, primarily scale. Because you can definitely use systemic coaching at an individual level. You can help people understand where they exist in like a relationship system, for example. That individual work can be really profound in that way, but it does break down at scale as soon as you have more than two people. How do you do individual coaching? Right now you're working with a team. Now you're working with a program. And to be effective, you have to be coaching those bigger dynamics and those bigger entities, often which are invisible. Relationships tend to be invisible, and power structures tend to be invisible. Lines of influence tend to be invisible. So how do we find out ways to sense those and make them explicit so that we can work with them? And that's, I believe, what systemic coaching is. This program is important because achieving agility is extremely difficult, and achieving agility at an organizational level is asks of us mastery of so many different domains. When you're an agile coach, so when I was an agile coach, it was enough to know Scrum, it was enough to know technical practices, it was enough to know the basics of the business, and with that knowledge, I could bring the right people together, and we could have the right conversations, and we could make things a lot better pretty easily. Once I started coaching at the enterprise level, whole organization, I quickly ran out of tools. And I realized that if I was going to be operating there, I needed a lot more. And that's why I went back to graduate school to get a master's degree in organizational development, for example. Agility cuts across a lot of different areas of practice, right? So for Agilists who have come from a Scrum background, they are often really tied to that as Scrum is the answer. Folks who have come from a Kanban background can feel like Kanban is the answer. People that have jumped right into SAFe, the Scaled Agile framework, think that that's the answer. And what we're wanting to do with enterprise agility is say yes to all of it, at least the good parts of all of it, and have a more informed, critical conversation around what of those things might we suggest or investigate, and which of those things are too risky. What about economics? What about flow? What about all these other things that if you're operating at the enterprise level, I believe you need to have not just a little bit of knowledge about them, you need a lot of knowledge about them. All of it. Product development, it's just everything. And so that's a big ask. That's a high bar. As we wrote the competencies, we struggled as a group of, are we setting the bar too high? Are we saying that you in order to get this certification, is anyone going to be able to achieve it? Or are we making it too hard? And if you make it too easy, is it relevant? Is it valuable? Because somewhere in the middle there is a really powerful place for practitioners to make a really big impact. So this program seeks to find that sweet spot. And this program seeks to find that sweet spot by assuming that people are going to need, coaches as human beings are going to need to be supported, mentored, coached by their peers, by us as leads to achieve that. And so we have this 9-month cohort-based program where we, as an Agilist perspective, as a complex adaptive response, help people step by step level up to where we think they need to be. So for me, it is, where do I need help? Either from someone in my client or from another coach or from a group of coaches. I can certainly bring a tremendous amount of expertise. That expertness, shall we say, at this level is about being very clear on the limitations of that expertise. And that I can't do it all. I can do a lot. Depending on where things go, I'll probably need help. That's a different, I think, a different paradigm of expert than somebody who can do it all. Like that's, an expert mechanic can fix anything in my car. That's awesome. An expert organizational agility practitioner cannot address anything that would happen in an organization. We know what we can do. We know what we can't do. We know what we need help with, and we can pull those people in. a practitioner first and foremost. I'm living this stuff every single day. I have an active portfolio of clients that are undergoing these kinds of changes. Some of them I've been involved with for years. Some of them are much either shorter or briefer, or I entered and left. This is not an academic pursuit for me. This is a pragmatic approach to making the world a better place. And I'm here to learn as much as I am to share and teach, and to be coached as much as I can coach. And I would like to think at least that I've wrapped my head around some pretty big topics. People have told me I'm a good teacher, a powerful teacher. I can help them make sense of things that they couldn't make sense of on their own. And I feel like I can demonstrate competency in all of the required areas of an enterprise agilist.